excited to have you on La Artisteada.
Yes.
We are here with, you are a creator, the mastermind behind Barz on Wheels, which I would love for you to go deeper into what it is, but it is just generally, it is a show where you allow people to like show their music, their freestyle rapping abilities in a car, which I think is pretty incredible. And you guys started back in Bakersfield and now are going all around the US, and then you're now going also internationally to Mexico City. Welcome, Manny Flores.
Muchas gracias, gracias. Thank you so much.
So excited, and I would love, I love the concept, love the idea, and I'm wondering, you know, I feel like a lot of people who have like ideas to create something have, you know, a lot of doubt and a lot of thoughts, and I'm wondering, like, what was your creative thought process before even talking to anyone about it?
I think a lot of creators can like relate. When it comes to creating, you always need some sort of stimuli. You always need something that like really keeps you going, you know, a reason kind of like to wake up and like, hey, let's get this done, right? For me, at the time, I kind of had nothing. So I had dropped out of school. I was working at Subway. I was working on a podcast that failed, and it was just kind of like, what's next, right? So as a creative, it is your job to create it, right? Or to find something new, right? So for me, usually people, the way it works is people say, this is the big idea. What do I need to, you know, to create that idea? But I recommend the other way around. I would say, look at what you have around you and then create the idea with what you have, right? Because there's less excuses that way because you already have it, right? So in my case, I was like, I have the audio equipment from the failed podcast, right? I have a few cameras, right? And I also have a Honda Odyssey that is parked outside. So I was like, well, can I do that? And I also had experience with music videos and like working with artists. So I knew some artists who freestyled. So I was like, what can I create with that concept? And that's when Barz on Wheels happened. So as a creative, I just decided to just use with what I had, and then Barz on Wheels became to be.
Oh my gosh, I love the fact that you just didn't like sit forever after like the podcast. Because I think like sometimes we like start doubting ourselves like once we like tried something and it didn't work. And I love that you also said about like seeing at what you have.
Exactly.
And then that's a completely different approach, which I absolutely love. And I'm wondering, what then was the first conversation that you had with the people around you? I think that for me, that's like honestly like a struggle asking people, because I feel like I ask people for help to help me, and I struggle with asking people like, okay, like this is a mission, like let's do it. Like so I'm wondering, what was your process to talking to other people?
Yeah, so I actually relate with you on that note, because I also don't like asking for help. Because in my head, the more people you depend on, the more reasons, or there's going to be more excuses or more possibility of people disappointing you, right? So when I started the show, again, I worked with what I had. So the only thing I was missing was a driver. I had the artist, I had the equipment, I didn't need no editor, I didn't need nobody to tell me what to do. I just needed a driver. So that's when I was forced to ask. So at the time, I asked my dad. He was the first person I asked. I was like, hey dad, look, I got this show. I think it's a viral thing. I just can't figure out the driving part, because I can't drive and ask him questions. It's just too dangerous. And I want to look at the camera and talk to them. So I was like, can you drive? He's like, yeah, let's do it. Like, my dad is a go-getter with me. He says, what do you need? He'll make it happen. But something about having my dad in it and like having him work on top of the work he had and like being a manager and things like that, it was just a lot of stress for him. So I was like, you know what? I had to find somebody else. So I had to ask my friend.
Fired your dad.
I fired my dad, basically. I was like, Dad, this is not gonna work out. Like, you need your hours to rest. So I found my friend Joseph, and then from there he became the co-host and the driver of the show. But going back to like your question about like asking for help, is I am a person who doesn't like being disappointed. So the less people I depend on, the better. So for me is that's kind of like the way I do it. Unless it's a very crucial thing that I can absolutely not do. But when you do something like Barz on Wheels, you realize that a lot of people are attracted to you. They're attracted to the idea, and they see your vision and they see your belief. And at the end, they're just like, they're willing to hop on board with you because they see the potential of it. There's no need for me to ask. If they see like, hey Manny, your videos are slacking here and there, can I offer help in becoming the new editor? Hey Manny, you have no beats for the show. You keep on using YouTube beats. can I produce beats for the show? That just came naturally. And that's the beautiful thing when you have a great idea, that people attract to it.
But let's go back a little bit, and I want to know, like, what exactly did you tell Joseph?
Yeah, so I came up with a drawing plan of all the angles of the van. I was like, look, this is where you're gonna be at. This is where the 4 camera angles we're gonna have. This is gonna be the setup. It's gonna be 3 lives. The artists have 3 different beats. If they lose a life, it's because they skip a beat or they messed up in the freestyle. The whole objective is to be challenged. So there's going to be levels. It's going to be more difficult as they go. Do you want to be a part of it? Do you even have the time to do it? And he's like, let's do it. There is no excuse. And it also helps when the person has free time, right? When their only responsibility is to work, and they're single and they don't have, big families and stuff. So it all came together perfectly. And he was like, yeah, I see the vision. I have the time. There's no excuse to do it. And if I'm not asking so much of you, then there's less excuses for you not to do it, right? Like if I'm gonna pick you up and do the episodes, you don't gotta use your gas. You don't gotta give me money. I'll buy food for you when we go out. I kind of like almost incentives.
Yeah.
So I made a pitch for him, and he said yes.
And I'm wondering, because it seems like you had a very specific idea of like where the cameras were going to be located and like what this was going to look like. And I'm wondering, like, where did you learn that? Did you have anyone in your family who like did this or maybe like with the experience with your podcast before, or even before that podcast, where did you learn all of this?
So what I do full time is actually I'm a social media director. Like I'm a content creator. So I started as music videos. So when I left college, I studied at UC Berkeley, and my goal like for life was to become a neurosurgeon. So since like 12 years old, like neurosurgeon was the way to go. I went to UC Berkeley. I studied for a year, and then I also started I studied film studies. I did not like it. I dropped out. Started working, saved up money for a camera. And then from there, I started making my own music videos. Started working with a lot of artists.
I need to ask you, so you dropped completely from UC Berkeley?
Yes. I said, I gotta go. And a lot of people were against this because I like, it was good. Like, he's gonna be the doctor. He has a full scholarship. But I just wasn't happy. I wasn't happy, and I knew I needed money, so I went straight to working at Subway, and then saved up for the equipment. And I realized how much important or how much value comes with content. And at the time, social media didn't really blow up. TikTok wasn't around, right? So people weren't really on that wave yet. And it was until 2 years later when the TikTok and the Instagram became the whole norm. So now businesses see that value, like getting a content creator, a social media manager, for example. So I was right before the wave hit, and it was perfect timing. And then now with Barz on Wheels, perfect timing as well.
Wow. Okay. So I'm just shocked because I feel like everyone is like, or at least in my experience, right? Like I grew up and it was like, you have to do X, Y, and Z so that you can graduate, get a job, and continue. And I think that for me, that realization of wanting to kind of pursue art and be in the art space, even though I work in the entertainment industry, I didn't even know that I could work in the entertainment industry first. But to me, it was, for me, I remember that conversations with my mom. I at a point in high school, I wanted to study art, and my mom told me you can always study art, but right now maybe graduate with a degree. And I was like, okay, that's just what I'm supposed to do, so I'll just do and finish it. And I am wondering for when you made what was your decision making of I'm gonna be successful, I'm gonna quit school and be successful? Because I feel usually you hear he's a dropout and there's no success after that. But you went to a very prestigious university, and you chose to bet on yourself.
Yeah, leap of
faith. What's that English word? Bet on yourself. So I'm wondering what was that process like?
Yeah, so...
And did you know you were going to become an artist?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely not. The whole photography, videography thing was always a lingering concept, just like you with art, right? It was just, again, that leap of faith and that decision, right? So at that time, my whole life the trajectory was towards being a doctor, right? So that's all I knew. That's all I understood. And those are the only options that were there, right? Or at least existed for me. It was until I started seeing other creatives, on YouTubers, for example, who started doing these lifestyles, living these lifestyles, and it's just this guy is living the life I want to live, right? This person is traveling, this person has this amount, right? So the potential existed, right? But it was just, there was no blueprint, to create it. It was like when I was studying, I started like in my like time off, like I started working with like small businesses in the Berkeley area. So there was this ice cream shop, for example. The product was great, it tasted amazing, but just the marketing wasn't there. So I approached the guy and I said, hey, Randy, is there any way I can create content for you? Like, let's do some promotional videos so we can get more people here, some students, right? I work with a lot of people at UC Berkeley. I would love to bring them here. He agreed. And from there, I started seeing the value in it, right? So when you understand value, you just have to scale it in a different way, right? So instead of just seeing it as a small shop in Berkeley, ice cream shop, right? You see it as like a city thing, a state thing, international thing, right? So at that point, any idea with value or any product with value will in itself result in something big, right? So with Barz on Wheels at the time, it wasn't a concept, but I knew that I knew I was gonna be like, I was gonna create something. And when I was younger, I was like, I'm gonna give myself before high school, like before high school ended, so I won't have to go to college, right? But obviously I ran out of time, had to go do the narrow route, and it eventually just kind of lined up perfectly. But when you're surrounded by a lot of like educated students with wealth, and you see that their parents have aligned and are the doctors and lawyers that they want to be, there's a lot of doubt that percolates, right? I would call my dad when I was like studying, and I would tell him how stressed I was, and I would like cry on the phone, and like I would hide it, and I would just tell him, yeah, that I'm happy, like it's amazing here, like I love it. But like I would cry, and then I put the phone down, and then like I'll suck it up, and then I'll talk to him again. He didn't know that, but the time it was very difficult because I didn't know anybody. Yeah. And I was going through like with the whole identity crisis, and I just said, fuck it, like I'm not happy, and I'm not gonna be successful if I stay this route. Like I won't, regardless of everything, like regardless of the scholarship that I have, regardless of everything, I have to make this leap of faith. So, and at the time when I was working at Subway, there's a lot of doubt. It's like what the fuck you do, Manny, right? So you just kind of play it out, and you have a plan like every month. Like there's a reset plan. Like, hey, you saved up 2,000 this month. Perfect. All right, what's next? All right, let's save up 4,000. Boom. I could get the camera now. From the camera, what are you gonna do now? Music videos. Not only in Bakersfield, but in LA. From there, scale it. And then the podcast happened, and then Barz on Wheels. Yeah. So
I am just shocked at like the determination. Like you were good at like making like that planning, right? Like planning and like achieving, and okay, what's next?
Yeah, just being spontaneous, just kind of going with it.
Dude, so inspiring. Thank you. And I'm wondering, like right now that you're like facing a lot of growth. How has that process been for you, and then also like with the team, is the team growing, and what are the things that you're learning through growth?
So I speak about this all the time in every podcast, and the biggest like lesson that I've learned is how to become a leader. And leadership is funny because there's a lot of like self-help books about leadership, there's a lot of people who speak about leadership, but to actually experience it and be in a position where you are the leader and you're forced to adapt in that position, there's no time to like look at Google or like how to leadership or how to do this or read a book. Sometimes you just learn through the process. And with Barz on Wheels, it's one of those things where like I didn't know that being a leader was going to be part of the job description, right? But I adapted, and it was difficult at first, kind of like when everyone's life is revolved around a big idea, right? You understand that everyone is an investor in that idea. So you as the creator and owner of it, you are essentially responsible for their investment. For example, Joseph, if he's driving, he's saving the time, he's traveling with us, he is investing his time and he's not getting paid for it, right? The media people, the videographers, the photographers, the artists, for example. And if there's any moment where I doubt myself and I say, fuck it, I quit, then it's a wasted potential for the idea, but also wasted time and investment for everyone that was part of it. So that's just the tough pill to swallow when you start something, because it's like you said, the growth. It's got to a point where I can't just stop. Like I literally can't. Like every month has to be something new. And I realized that with growth comes more growth, and there's more expectations, and there's more responsibilities. And with the team, like I've been very blessed to know that there's team members who believe in the vision regardless of where it's at. So even if there was a point where we just kind of stay stagnant, these artists, these team members will still believe in the idea because they know in the long term, Manny will take care of us. So it's a beautiful thing to, you know, kind of be part of their leader.
I'm crying. It's so beautiful. And I'm wondering, like, with the challenges, what are the challenges? What are the challenges that you face, like, on a normal day? And also, what are the challenges of growth? You know, you just mentioned about growing and, like, there's more responsibilities. Do you ever feel like you are not ready maybe for that growth, and like what is your internal conversation with that?
Yeah, so you're right. So when it comes to growth, I think the biggest thing, like the first thing that pops up is just the level of expectations, right? Like you're expected to just reach higher levels, right? Not only the fans, but also like the people, your team, right? They're expected to do more, bigger things, right? So when we collaborate with people, I'm a lot more selective. So it means that I can't, like, unfortunately, I can't work with the podcast or like just a show who like is not really serious about their craft. Like I can't just say yes to the homie who just wants to start, right? When I collaborate, it's more thoughtful. It's more like not just a short picture, but also what's in it for the long run, right? So, but when I started, like when we went viral last year, my phone, like that morning on Thanksgiving, like my phone started blowing up, right? Like the video, this random video just blew up, and from the 700 followers that we had, less than 1,000, we went to 1,000, like 2,000 next morning, 10,000, you know, and then we eventually hit the 50,000, you know, follower mark, and it was a beautiful thing. But the fear wasn't of like failure, like it wasn't like, oh damn, I'm gonna mess up. The fear was of success, because damn, I don't think I can handle this, because there's more eyes on you, right? 50,000 people, when you put that to scale, like a classroom, like we're used to a classroom, like 25, 30 people, right? Whatever that number is times whatever to equal 50,000 classroom, like that's a lot. It's a lot of eyes on you and a lot of pressure. But at that time, when I was like really trying to like, you know, fix my mindset and like, hey, yo, like this happened for a reason and you're not changing anything. You don't have to change nothing. The content doesn't change. Like, right, the team members don't change. You don't have to change. You just have to do the same shit you were doing that got you to the fucking 50,000 follower mark, right? But just for more people to watch. And then, you know, kind of just like let it go in like natural process. But the growth is just inevitable when you're doing something so beautiful and like you're happy doing it. So it's, you know, I bring it, I welcome it, you know?
Yeah, no, that's crazy, because I feel like it's an interesting conversation of like growth and like hitting like that kind of like an overnight success.
Yeah.
But you know, like, you know that it wasn't an overnight success.
Yeah.
People just were able to access our content and see it. But I always think about right now, you know, like I think older generations say like, oh, like people want everything for like tomorrow, like people don't want to work hard. And then it's like, oh, when you were prepared and then like just one day you got like so much attention, you know, like what does that feel like? You know, were you excited? I'm wondering, like, were you excited, or what was that feeling that day?
I was kind of like confused on what was going on. It was just like literally likes out of nowhere. Because on that time, I was averaging like 30 likes, 60 likes. 75 likes was like, this is a lot, you know? But at that, I was averaging like 35, 50. And so when I started seeing like one post started hitting like 120, 150. And then the views of that video was from like 333 views, started going to 1,000 views, 2,000 views, right? 2,000 views in one video, one reel was a lot. For that, you know, beginning of that. So I started showing, like, we started making bets with my family. I was like, hey, yo, look, this video is doing like a lot. It's moving really quickly. I don't know what's going on. They're like, yo, it won't go to 5,000, bro. It's like, no, it hit 5,000 already, bro. It's going to 7,000. So I was confused. Yeah. But I was like, yo, like, what is this? You know? And it was until 2 days after that I knew that this is not going to stop. Because literally, like, I don't know a lot of people can relate this, but you refresh and I will see 100 new followers. Refresh, 100 new followers. Wow. 100 new followers. Like, it was that crazy. Like, I could not stop.
You're like, are these bots?
Exactly, right? I thought someone bought something and just like messed up my thing. But no, it was a natural thing. Refresh. And it was fun to play with. Yeah. Like, I was like, bro, refresh it. Yeah. Refresh it. And it just kept on going. Wow. And it did not stop those 2 or 3 weeks. And I I was mesmerized because that is like literally what I feel like what celebrities go through with. You know, they wake up, you know, million notifications, you know, and I was like, yo, I'm experiencing what they experience every morning. You know, so it was dope.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, like, with this growth, has your team also grown?
Yeah, so when it comes to the actual like managing and making decisions, it's on me. Like, I am the one who decides what is the best for the team and for the show. And I decide who's going to be on the show and whatnot. But when it comes to the actual production and like helping hands, yes, the team has grown. And now we have like a team of like a media team, like a certain videographer. Because I used to do the video all the time. So like I would be the one recording, pressing play, running over here, let's film. No, it's like we have a team now. I have photographers. We have set artists who are like every time we collaborate with someone, they're gonna be freestyling for us.
Oh wow.
We have a driver. We have a big ass van in case we need to travel far, right? Like San Francisco or anything like that. So all of that, all those little segments, all those little team members are important. And, you know, with the growth has grown, you know, the team has grown.
Yeah. How do you choose who is going to be working with you?
That is a great question. So I've lost a lot of followers because of this. Wow. And that's just, you know, kind of part of the process.
Like followers as in people who like you or actual like social media followers?
No, social media followers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So for example, when I posted who's going to be on season 3 of Barz on Wheels, I lost 5,000 followers in that week, right? Wow. Which is, you know, a lot, right? But when you dabble into like those higher numbers, right? Yeah. Losing 1,000 followers in a month is normal, like that, because you know that you're gaining 2,000, right? Like it just kind of balances out, right? And that month, obviously, that day when I posted that literally that week, I lost 5,000, and it was just, you know, people who are there for the short run. You know, people follow you sometimes just because they want to see what they could get from you, right? How many views can I get from being on the show, right? But it's my job to be selective on those people, right? So when I choose artists, for example, I'm very, very peculiar about how long they've been working, what kind of music do they make originally, are they creating content, are they serious about their content, and are they showing kind of support on the show? Because if you don't support me, it doesn't make sense for me to support you, right? And just like I'm very peculiar about, if you don't follow me, I'm not gonna follow you back, right? And it's like people beg me like, put me on the show. But it's like, all right, let me see your page, and I see that there's no follow back button right there that I was like, you know, that I have to follow back. It's like, bro, you don't even follow the show, bro. How do you expect me to support you? So little things like that. There's like a little thing that little checklist in my head. But when it comes to like the team members, it all comes down to their investment. If you're investing to me, it only makes sense for me to invest into you. So a lot of these members, like for example, Marvin, he's a videographer. Marvin lives nearly an hour away from Bakersfield. Every time I needed him, he would drive on his own account, on his own gas money, and he would film whenever I needed him. If I needed to go LA, he will pick us up, because I didn't trust the Honda van a lot of times. He would pick us up and he would take us to LA.
That was your car?
Yes.
Okay.
And then he would take us back, and then he will go home, right? That's, you know, a lot. It's 3 hours, you know, one way, 3 hours back. That's a big investment for Marvin. So with, you know, signs,
Marvin.
Go Marvin, right? So with things like that, it shows me like this guy loves what he does. He is happy when he's with us, and he's really investing into the show. He's investing to me. So I want him to be part of these experiences. So when we travel, when we do big things, Red Bull, hotels and all that, I want him to be a part of that. And unfortunately, I'm not at a point where I can pay him, right? I want to, but I can't pay everybody. Sometimes I'm like, hey, bro, here's 30 for gas, or here's 40 for gas. Here's food. Let me buy your food today. I'm willing to do that when I have it. But when I don't, I tell him like, hey, I appreciate that you drove this far. I'll pay you next week. I promise I will give you the money. But I know you did it. Just know that I'm accounting it, and I'll pay you next week. Just give me some time. And they're understanding. So when I'm able to have those conversations with the team, that's how you know you made the right decision.
Is it hard for you to have those conversations?
No, I know. Okay. Because it's inevitable. Like it would be much worse if I just kind of just ignore the fact that you just drove 3 hours to come help this shoot, right? But I've gotten to a point where I communicate with everybody. I put them to the side and I tell them like, hey, thank you so much for this. Or if they do something wrong, I tell them like, hey, don't do that, or what now. It's just part of being a leader, right? Which is the hard part.
Have you always been comfortable, or has it been like a process of you of you having to do that and then getting comfortable?
Yeah, so having those okay. The first time I had a conversation like that was with Joseph, right? Our driver and the co-host. It was about like kind of the investment into the show and how much he's entitled to the show, right? Which is a hard, difficult conversation, right? Like, because I'm basically saying, if I say like, hey, you're entitled to 50%, he might believe, no, I'm entitled to 75, right? Or 100, maybe, right? So that's basically, because I'm basically telling, this is how much you're worth. That's kind of like what I'm saying by giving you a number, So that was the biggest like argument, discussion. That was like literally a 3-piece fight. That was my first time handling with somebody, because he's the only member I had at that time. So after that, that's when I got more comfortable with like, look, I can lead with emotions. Initially, like if you would say something, I would feel some sort of way because I would take it really personally. Like if you question my show, or if you question why I did this, I'd be like, well, fuck, it's not your show. You listen, like you do what I say, and like it would happen, right? Like something like that.
Were those your thoughts or your actions?
No, those were my initial actions, right?
Okay, wow.
So I was very immature and very insecure about the show, because I didn't know what it was yet, right? We have very little followers, like there's nothing crazy going on. So when somebody's coming to me and asking how much they're entitled to the show, then in my head I'm like, wow, it's really early on, like like I don't really know, I don't really feel comfortable talking about this.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of fights of that early on with my co-host, which is normal. A lot of people can relate to this with business partners, right? So after that phase, I learned that people are led differently, right? You can't be like very straightforward with somebody sometimes, or somebody requires a little bit more. Somebody requires a hug sometimes, or to be pulled to the side. You can't call them out in a group, for example. So that experience gave me the experience to lead everybody else. But it's not easy. Like,
do you think Joseph was patient? And like I'm wondering like how, like, because I feel like usually we learn like practice reaction, and if you get a negative reaction, it's like, oh, do you think the people around you gave you that opportunity to learn from how you were approaching things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't know for sure, but I will say that the dynamic I have with every member is different, and it is a point where I'm happy with. So for example, with Joseph specifically, it is a point where we reached a dynamic where he understands me, I understand him, and we understand the expectations from each other. And there's no need for me to tell him anything, or anything crazy, because he already knows, or the way I will react to certain things. But most of the adapting happened from me, because it was the way. Because as a leader, like, you have to be cautious of the way you say things and how you say it. Before, I was like, fuck that, let me just tell you how I feel, right? But sometimes I just gotta shut up as a leader and listen to what you're asking, what you need, what you require to perform well, right? Because if you're not happy, I won't have a driver, and then that messes up the whole show, right? So some sacrifices do have to be made, but it's your job as a leader to adapt to those things and adapt to each person. But for Joseph, I can't say for sure if he changed a lot, but with the dynamic we have, we're happy.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's positive. I have to interrupt and say that now my neck is hurting from turning this.
Okay, you wanna?
So like, let me just like look
do
this
a little stretch. Do a little stretch.
Turn this way.
I wonder if I might have the same pain.
No, I think it's been a little bit of time, but no. Okay, and back to you. I'm wondering like you are not a rapper yourself.
No.
You are a person who facilitates bringing this art form to others. And I'm wondering, did you want to be a rapper? What got you into like specifically freestyle? That it's like something that's a little bit, I would say it's very niche. Like people who like it, and like people don't really like know about it if you don't know it exists.
Yeah, it exists.
So I'm wondering like, what was your relationship to it?
Yeah, so I grew up with rap. Like I grew up with J. Cole, Kendrick. Like those are the kind of music, very like thought-provoking music. So there's always been like hey, like I wonder what I'll sound like being a rapper, right? But there's never been an inherent pursuit for it. It was until like, again, when you're a creator, like you see opportunities, You want to create something that has never been created before. And of course, there's been versions of freestyles, right? Like there's little versions here and there. But using, again, with what I had, I was like, what can I create? And what is missing? What value can I bring to the world? And where people inherently are drawn to it. So I was like, the freestyles in a van just sounds more like poetic, just sounds a little bit more, just stands out a little bit more than just saying, yeah, we perform car karaoke type thing, right? Like it's already been done before. But the freestyling element is different. The whole video game retro feel to it is different, right? Like it's just, I was like, fuck it, let's just do something different. And that's what happened. Yeah.
Well, that's so interesting. And I think it's very interesting too, like you're making something new, you're being innovative, you know? And I'm wondering, like, how do you come up with these ideas? Like, is it do you like, or with like new ideas, you were mentioning about like making some changes, and I'm wondering, like, how do you come up with that? Is that like, do you think it's like a supply and demand thing, or you don't care about that and you just create?
Yeah, I think when you're a creator, you have to understand that sometimes you will have to make a compromise, right? Like you have to say like, hey, there's already content being made like this. Let me create something like this, but let me tweak it a little bit, right? Sometimes you will have to copy, like, it's copy and pasting, right? And it's unfortunate sometimes, but some people just, they want to create something. They want to start somewhere, and that's how they start, right? But for others, or at least, in my case, I knew that if I was really going to invest into something, it had to really make a mark. Like, it really had to say something like, oh shit, what is that? Right? And, gaining your attention is difficult sometimes, right? Like just kind of like the general population, right? So you have to understand the market, and you have to understand that you have to give a reason for people to give a fuck about you, because you're just another video online, you're just another content creator when there's millions now, right? And I was just lucky to just come up with Barz on Wheels. Like, it was just like, I'm gonna make people watch this. And how do I bring that nostalgic feel to it? With the whole video game aspect. And it's just that retro feel, it just kind of hits home for everybody. So it's another reason for people to stay.
That's, oh my gosh, that's very interesting, like thinking about like how to grab people's attention, because there's just like so many things going on. And I'm wondering now, like, a little bit about freestyle. I was reading about how freestyle, like I guess that's freestyle, like coming up in the moment. What used to be like back in the day, I think around the 90s, it used to be a form of rap that wasn't really respected. And I would love to learn if you know a little bit about that, and like the process. Do you think it's more respected now? Do you think it isn't? And the reason why it wasn't respected, from what I read, was that it was because like people would really really value like composing and like that time, and like it didn't make sense. Like it was like kind of like cheap for people to just come up with things. And I'm wondering, like, do you think it's changed?
I think it has changed.
Okay.
And the reason I think it has changed, because the level of freestyle and what it results is on another level. So for example, like when like if I said J. Cole made a song and it was an amazing song, and he one day said that was a freestyle, then now people's perception is like, oh shit, he's able to create this via freestyle, right? So now the freestyle world, right, the freestyle title, people's head is like, oh shit, freestyle could be up here, right? Because J. Cole is representing that. So I think it's just people like being artists, just attempting it, and now there's a lot of artists who kind of push that on TikTok, on Instagram. There's a lot of people just say this is a freestyle, or like this is a 16 bar freestyle, let's do it, or 82 bar freestyle, let's run it, and they just record themselves on TikTok and they just kind of go at it, kind of no strings attached, kind of just having fun with it. And when people see that, you're like, oh shit, he's able to create with so little. It's literally just his phone, his iPhone mic, whatever, and it sounds that good. Holy shit, like I gotta freestyle more. So I think with the social media and everything, it has helped the whole freestyle element. And it has brought it, with Barz on Wheels, my goal is to like bring it to like the mass market. So like if Barz on Wheels could fucking headline a festival, for example, as a freestyle performance collective, I've never seen that before. Right? And again, that's our job to set that new pedestal of like freestyle is up here, or it can be this good, right? It's not just people just kind of writing all the time, which is good. There's nothing wrong with both, but
I honestly, like, when I read that, I was like, what? Because to me, freestyle is fascinating. Like, how can you come up with one rhymes. I don't know if people like I don't really know a lot of freestyle rappers, but I'm like, the things that go through my head is like, how are you rhyming off of the top of your head? Do you have these words already? Are you trying just to connect them? And even if you are trying to connect the words that are already in your head, how are you making sentences that make sense?
Makes sense, yeah.
So whenever I watch your videos, like I literally like of like all these different artists who are doing it and are doing it like in such an entertaining way, I'm like, oh, I get the chills every single time.
I agree. I feel the same way.
And it's so interesting to me, you know. But I would love to know a little bit more about like. I watched also a couple of battles, and I would love to hear like your opinion. I've seen, you know, a couple of female artists who battle with men, and it's what I've seen has been that it's always a little bit, well, not a little bit, very outwardly misogynist.
Yes.
And I'm wondering like, what is your perspective on it? Do you think about this when you are doing like your rap battles in on wheels? And is that something that you're interested in like kind of like battling, you know? And to be honest, like as a man, do you think it's important?
That is a great question. And the reason it's a great question because it's such a cop-out. It's such a cop-out to target, like, for example, if I was just like, I remember there's one battle, not on Barz on Wheels, but I just kind of saw on the internet, and it was essentially, the topic was like cooking or office, something like that. And the guy kind of, his whole freestyle thing was like, oh, you belong in the kitchen type shit, like, oh, like, you're my assistant type thing. Like that, it's just such an easy like cop out, you know, because at that point, like, what can the girl say like in regarding like, you know, CEO, you know, kind of just staying into this, you know, the stereotypes, right? But with Barz on Wheels, with the whole versus battle, my goal was to not focus on the negatives or not focus on what is obvious. For example, like if someone was like super overweight, right? I didn't want someone to just be like, oh, you fat ass or whatever. Just kind of just, you know, make fun of them that way. Because that's too easy, right? So when I do these battles, the way I do it is, this is team 1, this is team 2. You're Batman, I'm Superman. Let's battle. So now I have to talk shit about Superman. You have to talk shit about Batman. You know, when not. So same thing here. I keep it safe. I keep it not as easy. And I keep it more entertaining that way. Because if we focus that way, it brings in the kids, the families, and then you know, kids are like, oh yeah, that's a good one, because they understand Superman, they understand Batman, right? But if you start targeting like certain things, like the weight or the way they look or hair, or whatever, then it's like that's the message we're sending, you know. And to make freestyle like mainstream, you're gonna have to get creative that way. Like I can't be misogynistic and then expect to be on fucking TV and shit freestyling, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of something artists have to accept. But like I said, I think it's a cop-out. I don't think there's nothing creative about it. I think it's already been done before. And with the whole versus thing, with the battle, with the topics, my hope is to end that, or at least, you know, prevent it. Yeah. To really test their freestyling skills. And I think that's what we do.
That's so interesting. I feel like, well, you went, was it years, or like how long were you at UC Berkeley?
I was a year and a half.
Okay, yeah, I think I studied at UCLA, and I think that like not necessarily a competition, but kind of a competition.
Yes, I know.
But I think it's I think that because of like what I studied and like being 4 years there with like being presented like all these like very like huge concepts of like womanhood and identity and like colorism and racism and all these things, I feel like I've never heard that perspective of like it's just cheap. Yeah, it's done before. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like right now I'm trying to like process like, oh my god, like it is cheap and it is something that's like old and not, to me, like it's not entertaining. But it's also very interesting that you're like, because kids can understand it, like we're shifting the topics that we talk about. Yes. And with that, I'm wondering, do you want to talk a little bit about like the new versions of Barz on Wheels? I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have a lot of segments we're working on. We just dropped the Barz on Wheels Versus, which is with the Rebel collaboration, right? That kind of initiated that. So shout out to Rebel Batalla. So that partnership kind of like started letting me think about the possibilities of more segments, right? So we have the Ride Along series, which is essentially just people perform their live performance, like a Tiny Desk, but on wheels, right? But now I thought about 2 concepts, and one of them is called Sudden Death. So essentially, I wanted to make a level so difficult where you only have one life, there's a lot of rules, and you can't cuss. You have to freestyle for 3 to 4 minutes. You know, and you only have one life. And if you mess up or you suck, whatever, then we have to kick you out of the van. It's a very simple concept, but
literally.
Say that one more time.
Literally.
Like very simple.
Like, are you like going?
No. I'm just like, I'm sorry, bro. And then I press the button and the door slides open. Yeah, the door slides open. Like, you gotta go. And then I close it. So we did some episodes of these, and the funny thing is that so before we bought the new van, we were filming with the old van, and the old van it's a common problem with the Honda Odysseys, but the sliding doors don't always work. Like they're known to malfunction over time.
Yeah.
So the one on the driver's side is stuck, but on the right side it's faulty. So when Joseph could press the button, and sometimes the motors will go and close, but a lot of times it will get stuck in the middle, and then I would have to get out, and I would have to slide it close. So when we did these episodes, I was like, "You gotta go, bro." Joseph will press the button, and it'll get stuck in the middle. Man, I'll have to go out. And then
making it a little more dramatic.
Sorry, bro. All right, go. And then I gotta slide it in, and then we go. Mm-hmm. So that was just little awkward moments with the old van, but now we got a new van, so the malfunction doesn't exist no more. So that's that series, and then our last series that we're working on is Barz and Wheels Kids, and I want to really kind of provide a platform for just kids to under 13, just kind of hone in their talents, and I want to do a little something different. So it won't be in the van. I want to build a customized vehicle, like a electric battery powered little car, like in the kids play. Yeah. And have them just cruise in like a nice safe neighborhood, like in the suburbs, whatever, and just literally just challenge them and like, yo, this is your beat, go off. And I haven't decided if we're still gonna do like freestyle or just written. But just to see a 5-year-old kind of just rip the fucking just free, bars for bars, it's an amazing thing to see. And I've seen it. But I want to fly those kids out to so they could be on the show.
Yeah, I've seen kids on TikTok, and I'm
so
like,
talented, so talented.
How are these kids coming up with this? And it's crazy because I feel like at the end of the day, I feel like even like for adults, freestyle rapping is playing like you're playing with like what your abilities are, and you're like saying things that are just like coming up in your mind without having to like. You can't really double think too much.
Yes.
So I'm overly excited about this.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one. I'm nervous for the kids. Because some kids can't handle the pressure of the spotlight. But I think, it's going to be a whole nother thing. Like, literally going to skyrocket, I think.
I thought you were going to say some kids can't handle rejection. I was like, I relate. No. I was a kid who could not handle rejection. No. I was like, I wanted to have in Mexico, it was like yeses. And I really wanted it. If I felt at something, I'd be like crying. And it's crazy because I have a little sister who handles rejection so well. I'm like, are we from the same family? So I hope you don't get kids like young me.
No. I'm gonna give the kids like so many tries. I'm like, do it again.
Yeah. I love that. I'm so excited. And like. Now I would love for you. You've shared so much wisdom, but I would love to hear what is. I guess because you've taken so many risks, I would love to hear what is your advice for people who maybe have failed. With your podcast, your podcast maybe wasn't successful, but that just prepared you for this. That's greater, And so I'm wondering for people that are trying to build something and trying to get a team and maybe maybe don't even have the resources of what you mentioned. You talked a little bit about that earlier, but what is something that you want people to take?
I think risks are inevitable. I think it's something you just have to accept with anything that is worthwhile. My advice, or at least when I said in the beginning, is use what you have. Because when you work the other way, when you do the formula the other way around, where you're like, hey, I want to do this crazy idea, and then you try to figure out what you need for that, there's a lot more excuses. Money, I don't got this, I don't got the camera guy, whatever, right? But people have to work the other way around. Because it's just more strategic that way, right? Because there's less to sacrifice, right? If I knew that I had a van, imagine if I didn't have a vehicle and I'm like, oh, I gotta go buy a van, right? It's just, do I really want to do it, right?
So if people just kind of accept risks are part of the just the formula, and just realize that, hey, let me work the other way around and try to figure something good, that your chances of success are just a lot higher. And then at the end, when you have something good, when you have something worthwhile, people will attract to you, like just inherently. And if people don't, just, you know, kind of just stay persistent with it. But people will come. People, if they see like you believe in it so much and you promoting it and you're doing your thing, people will get attracted to it. It's inevitable as well. And that's what I did with my team. And I was very blessed with it. Yeah.
I love to hear that. I always ask it like different variations of the same question, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I live so inspired.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful also for me to have a team right now. It's like exciting. But thank you so much for coming. You know, I know that you had a drive, so thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing your wisdom about like all of what you've built, and also your not only like I don't want to say like your struggles, but like the different challenges and how you approach them, because I think sometimes we see artists but we don't really see like what the thought process behind achieving something is. And I appreciate that you were also so transparent.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Gracias. Thank you.
Thanks. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for also being with us. I hope that you stay inspired, you know, that this really inspired you to do something greater, and to shape the culture around you. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yay.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yay.
Muchas gracias.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you. Make sure to subscribe and stay with us on our first ever season of La Artisteada.